have three categories we're going to look at in this chapter. And then there's a few things I'm going to go in the chapter and note, and you can mark those as we go through them. But I've broken this chapter into three categories. We have active and passive, humoral and cell-mediated, and specific, non-specific. This being the chapter that deals with your immunity, we're going to start all the way at the far side with non-specific. Give me an example of a non-specific immune response that you may have, but it's not specific for a particular illness.
Fever.
What?
Fever.
Fever is it?
Nausea.
Nausea? Sure. It could be food poisoning or a virus. Coughing and sneezing are good examples.
Headache.
Headache?
Body
Yeah, we
ache.
could have lots of causes of that, couldn't we?
Body aches.
Body aches. These are all general immune responses that the body tries to do ahead of maybe a specific response. If it can generalize it and slow it down, then we've used our first line of defense. So fever, I think, is a really good example, and we could use that in how it works. If this organism is surviving quite well at 98.6 at your body temperature, and it's multiplying, and your body recognizes a foreign substance that's multiplying at 98.6, it turns the heat up to try to slow it down. So it may crank it up a degree or two, and it tries to slow it down. We, being as smart as we are, we take Tylenol and drop it back down again. Well, we mess with our own system, so we feel better, but the organism is saying, thank you, now I can make you sicker longer. A fever also tells your body to rest. Do you feel like doing anything when you have a fever? You feel like going to bed, sleeping, resting, and that's what fever tells your body to do. Give me the energy to fight the infection. Don't use it out there making everybody else sick. And that's what we do. We take Tylenol. We have a sniffly nose, fever, whatever. We come up here to school and sneeze all over everybody else and make everybody else sick. Y'all are going to be sick next because they're sneezing on you back there. Both of you sick, aren't you? Yeah, I know it. So that's non-specific. We'll run fever with a viral infection or a bacterial infection. So it's not specific for one particular type of infection. Granted, we normally run higher fevers with bacterial infections than we do viral infections, but we still run fever. All right, now let's leave specific alone for now. We'll come back to it at the end. Let's look at active and passive. Active immunity is immunity created by either acquiring the illness and living through it, or immunizations that we get starting from leaving the hospital these days. What shot do they get before they leave the hospital?
Hepatitis.
If parents choose, they'll get a hepatitis shot. What month do they start getting their regimen of shots?
2 months.
2 months?
I don't remember.
I don't remember.
2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 6, 8, 12, 18, 24. And then they don't get anything for their 4.
My daughter gave me shots today. She's 8 months, so they skip just a minute.
So she went 8 months before she started getting shots?
No.
Or second
she didn't.
round?
Yeah.
Well, it depends on when you can get into the doctor too, doesn't it? Or get into the health clinic. I mean, you can get them for free at the health clinic, but it really brings up the question, and we may have talked about this, depends on which class. At what point does a child begin their immune system? When does their immune system start?
Sometime after birth.
Shortly after birth. There we go. So we have discussed it. We can't put a real time factor to that, but obviously we can start building it, and it starts looking for certain things. So active immunity is immunizations. Notice I don't say vaccination. The prefix vaccine means cow, and you vaccinate cows, you immunize humans. We're still, I hope, better than the average cow. We use vaccines to immunize with, but we don't line up a bunch of humans in a chute and vaccinate them with a big honking 18 needle. That would hurt. So active, the best means is actually acquiring the disease. In my day, it was acquiring chicken pox and mumps and measles. We lived through it. We had a great immune response to that and survived it. In y'all's day, you probably had chicken pox immunizations, didn't you? You didn't, y'all's probably just borderlining where they may have had it and chose not to or whatever. Do you have chicken pox immunization? Kendrick, you don't even know what you got. It's whatever mom threw at me, I just took it. or a whooping, probably. So that's active. Passive is temporary. It's temporary immunity. Name me a form of temporary immunity. Nope.
Colostrum.
Colostrum. You wrote all that stuff down the other day, didn't you?
I did.
She was a fast writer. Colostrum is temporary. We talked about, we get some in utero, and we get a booster with colostrum. But it's temporary. It's supposed to help until we can build our own immune system. It doesn't last a lifetime, or we wouldn't have to build an immune system. So temporary is passive. Other things that fall in this category would be tetanus, rabies. What's another one? It seemed like there was one other one I was thinking of.
Snake bite.
Snake bite, yeah, we can really get to chasing rabbits with a snake bite. If you get snake bitten, and you go to the doctor, what do you think the doctor's gonna do? What, in your mind, how do you think he should treat this? Anti-venom? Immediately? I mean, you have the snake with you, he's dead. We know for a fact it was a rattlesnake. As soon as he bit me, I snafooed him. Run his head off, but it was too late, he bit me. But I got him. We know it was a rattlesnake, so we're going straight for the anti-venom? Make an X on the bite spot, suck the poison right out. You've been watching True Grit too long. And then stick a cut of tobacco on it and wrap it up, right?
This is Oklahoma, you can tell.
Well,
That's all I did for
I'm just glad y'all are not my physician when I show up. First thing they're gonna do, and it really doesn't matter which snake it is. Around here, it's either water moccasin, copperhead, or rattlesnake. There is a very similar component to their poisons. The first thing they're gonna do is put you on an IV and try to dilute that poison. The swelling, say they bit you on the foot, the swelling's gonna come up the leg. They wanna keep it out of the abdomen. So dilute, dilute, dilute. They'll give you an antibiotic for the puncture wound, probably a tetanus shot for the puncture wound, and they're gonna dilute, dilute, dilute. If swelling reaches a point and starts subsiding, it'll heal itself. If it continues into the abdomen and starts reaching lethal organs, then we start looking at an anti-venom.
I didn't know that.
The anti-venom, let's kill as many people as the snakes itself, because it's made from horse serum, which we have allergic responses to.
Nice.
So we'll just give you an anti-venom, see if we can go ahead and kill you off. That's what we're gonna do. Do or die. So why it's passive, if somebody gets bit by a snake in 2013, next year they go back to the same snake den trying to catch another one and get bit again. Number one, they're not very smart. Number two, they're gonna go back to the dilute, 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 and if they get anti-venom, they'll get another shot because there's none left from the last time. Anti-venom runs about $10,000 a vial. Saline is a lot cheaper. So let's give them saline and make them pee a lot. Let's get it out a little at a time and reduce damage. Now there has been cases where the snake bite swelling was so massive that they literally had to go in and cut the flesh open to give relief.
That's what they did with my brother. He got bit on the hand and they sliced his arms and all his fingers open and he had to lay in the hospital.
Yeah, some pretty ugly scars today, isn't there? That's better than it bursting open because it's more controlled. So Read somewhere the other day, there's been more snake bites in the state of Oklahoma this year than ever in history. Why? We've gotten dumber.
Warm winter, maybe?
Their theory was we had a lot of summer rains and the snakes were more scattered instead of concentrated. If there's not a lot of water, then, and of course, most of the bites have been water moccasin, and which is probably, it's possibly the worst one. They have some components to their venom that actually rot in flesh, and it's pretty nasty. Of course, your larger the snake, the more venom they're going to have, but a snake can bite you and choose not to inject venom. And they say, well, smaller snakes are more deadly. That's just like a child that hasn't been potty trained, you're more likely to get peed on. So a small snake bites you, it can't control, it's going to dump all it has, which may be a minute amount, but it's more than what you wanted. So they have to, I guess, get venom trained, just like the kids get potty trained, right? A large snake, I mean, if they're just mad at something, they may just bite it to bite it. But if it's food or a life-threatening, they may inject poison. So the only documented death I know of here in the Floor County from a rattlesnake was a guy in Heavener got bit by his pet rattlesnake.
What an idiot.
Why would you have that pet?
It's a good question.
Especially if that particular
Here,
snake.
But he had been bitten by the snake before, and the snake had not injected venom. In his mind, he thought he'd built an immunity to the snake, an immunity to the venom. We as humans do not have that ability. We don't have that immune capability to build an anti-venom to snake bites. So when he got bit this time, he thought, he bit me again, stupid snake, you know. And 30 minutes later, ooh, my arm's getting awful big. It's starting to be rather painful. And by the time he gets to the hospital, he's dead. So
Sounds like the kind of
whatever
guy-
he did to the snake that time, he really pissed him off. I don't know. Now there's, when we get to the snake chapter, we'll talk a lot more about that, but, and we'll break down the venoms a little bit more. We do have one other poisonous snake in Oklahoma, and it's in southern Oklahoma. But that's all passive. It's temporary. We have to get a tetanus shot every 7 to 10 years, whether you like it or not. Colostrum, we start life off with that and then build our immune system. Every time you get snake bit, if you have to have an anti-venom, you'll have to get an anti-venom. It's only temporary process. All right, and then let's move to humoral and cell-mediated. Humoral deals with B cells, and this chapter doesn't dive into a lot of depth on B cells and T cells. It talks about some, and I'm going to pick out a couple to talk about. B cells produces antibodies and fights bacterial infections, bacteria. Cell-mediated is T cells, viruses, phagocytosis. Phagocytosis. Oh boy, back to snakes. One country you don't want to go to because 90% of their snakes are poisonous. Australia. I ran into a guy this summer from Australia, and in fact he was over in the United States touring, and I run into him and I said, so what are y'all famous for in Australia? You know, poisonous snakes. We've got lots of poisonous snakes. I only know 2 that's not. So that was his own personal experience. He only knew 2 that wasn't. So, but New Zealand don't have any snakes at all. So watch out for the eels, but they don't have any snakes. So humoral and cell-mediated. They're different, yet they work together a lot. Can we phagocytize a bacteria? Can your immune system phagocytize a bacteria? This is a yes or no?
Yeah.
Thank you. We can. Now, does antibiotics work on viruses?
No.
You're not supposed to. Tell that to some doctors that give you amoxicillin for everything, right? It's a placebo at that point, is what it is. So, B cells produce antibodies that fight bacteria. Phagocytosis can come into play in fighting the bacteria too, and maybe after they're dead it comes in and cleans up. T cells build our immunity for viruses. Now T cells are made and matured in the thymus. Here's the bad thing about the thymus. With age, it reduces its production of thymazine. With less thymazine, we have fewer white blood cells or T cells produced. Fewer T cells, your immune system begins to fail with age, which brought about the origination of the flu vaccine for the elderly. Originally, the flu, it was probably the most devastating disease ever come through. Illness, disease, what do you want to call it? Infection, because it wiped out an elderly population. So we come up with the flu vaccine, which is a combination of 3 possible flus that may come through here that started in Asia. Carried by birds during the migratory process. We see what's happening in Asia. We pick the 3 we think will be here. The 3 worst ones is what we pick. Build it in a vaccine. Go ahead and shut that if you don't mind. Somebody's way too happy for us. We can't stand happiness in here. So we put it in a vaccine and we start immunizing our people with it. And sometimes we hit a home run and sometimes, whoops. Yeah. You don't like flu shots? Yeah. How many people you know took a flu shot and got the flu anyway? How many people you know that took a flu shot and 2 days later they're sicker than a dog with the flu? It takes 9 days incubation. The flu shot didn't cause it. So, my mother-in-law's that way. She'll not take a flu shot now because she took a flu shot once, probably when she was 20. And she got the flu. It was just awful. And it was because of the flu shot she got it. Can't convince her otherwise. I don't have a master's degree in anything. So
what made them
she
sick
knows
then?
because it happened to her. Do what?
So what made them sick then?
It was already prior exposed. When it was prior exposed, it was already in the works. And so she took the flu shot. It was incidental, coincidental, however you want to put it. But
Isn't the flu shot, it's an inactive virus? It's not even, or a dead virus, it's not live anymore?
most of them are, yeah, they're dead. But the whole virus is intact. It's not, we've just killed it. And it enters the system and your immune system sees it and knows it's foreign, so it has time to react and build an immunity against it. Although it's already dead, we build an immunity against it, so when it does come in alive, the army's already ready to attack. And if we can clean it up before it makes us sick, in that latent time, that time in which it's making us sick but we don't feel sick yet, then we don't ever get sick. So sometimes they'll say, well, go ahead and take the flu shot. Although there's still a lot of people getting the flu, it could help you. Well, it could help you because one of those 3, it may prevent that one. Or 2 of the 3 it may prevent. So heck, it could help. So there's cases they missed all 3. And I believe in, it's either in 98 or 2000 they missed all 3. And both hospitals in Fort Smith had every bed booked and people needing in the hospital, and a lot of elderly lives were taken because of the flu. In most of the cases, because they got there too late, they was really, really sick before they went, and then they just couldn't recover. So these 2 work together. Now, there are differences, but yet work together. T cells, there's several of them. There's cytotoxic T cells, there's helper T cells, there's one other one I can't think of off the top of my head. But the one you probably want to make note of is helper T cells. They tend to be the trigger to the immune response, and it's the helper T cells that the AIDS virus destroys. And if the AIDS virus destroys the trigger, it's hard to get a complete immune response. You take the trigger off a gun, how are you going to fire it? So the helper T cells, in fact, that's how they diagnose where you're at, where AIDS patients are at. if you have AIDS or if you have what's considered full-blown AIDS. Depends on helper T cell count. If it's way down here below a certain number, you have full-blown AIDS. You may have the AIDS virus and helper T cell count still up. That's good news. Your immunity's still holding, but you still have the AIDS virus. So that's just kind of the way they look at it. And then the last one we bring into play here is specific immunity. Specific immunity is just that. It is specific for one particular thing. And let's say the day you were born, your immune system is whatever you got in utero. It was very little, but whatever you got in utero. And even after the pain, your mother decides she thought she was awful cute, so she still loves you. And she gives you the booster colostrum. She shares. And your immune system builds up a little bit until that first little trip to the health clinic when you get those big boosters, right? And that's a slow process. And you read this paper that says if you take all these shots, they could run fever and have symptoms of these illnesses, and they could actually acquire the illness. If you don't take the shots, your kids will never go to school and they'll be stupid. I'm pretty sure that's what they say. That's what I read. And so this is a slow process, but then their immune system levels off here. Let's use chickenpox. So we have a little immunity against chickenpox here. Right here, when we get exposed to it through the immunization, we have plasma cells identifying it as foreign. The plasma cell now starts structuring an antibody to match that chickenpox virus. And by the time we get here and level off, the antibodies have marked those for destruction. This is kind of how antibodies work right here. Let's see, these are 3 antibodies walking around or cruising around the bloodstream. We'll just put A for antibody. And here's some little foreign something coming through the system, and everything has a name tag. Now, these will have name tags as antibodies or self, as in a self cell. It's normal to be there. This one may have a name tag. We're going to put a name tag on it that says BB. Bad bacteria. Doesn't get any worse, it's bad. So he's cruising around the system. Of course, he's looking to wreak some havoc. And these antibodies cruise over there and say, how you doing, old buddy, old pal? Just seeing if you need any help. They're kind of the ushers of the door here, you know. Said, where you headed? Oh, just sightseeing. You know, bad bacteria's going to lie through his teeth. And so these guys tell him where to go. Said, man, if you want to go to the liver, you can go this way, go to the heart, go brain, whatever you want to do, we're here for you. They're lying too. Slaps him on the back, says, you have a good day. Well, when he slapped him on the back, he slapped a little sign on his back that says, kill me. That's how your immune system works. Really hoping he'd go to the liver, because there's Kupffer cells they're worse than any speed trap in a local small town. Kupffer cells, it's like, what does that say? Get the binoculars out, kill me. He just pulls up and shoots him. There's no questions asked. Somebody said, kill me, boom, we're dead. Explosion, probably booby traps, everything else. Just speed traps, slow them down just enough we can really get them good. And then probably cruise up on them and stab them 3 more times to make sure. But the antibodies mark cells for destruction. They mark cells for destruction. So plasma cells build antibodies. Antibodies mark them for destruction. Other cells may actually kill them off, but they get marked for destruction. Then we level off at a higher level, and now we have memory cells. Most of these are memory B cells. We have memory cells for that particular infection. In this case, I think we was using chickenpox, so we have memory cells for chickenpox. Now, how often does people get chickenpox more than once?
Not very.
It does happen.
Can they get it through the shingles when they get older?
Then can they get chickenpox from the shingles
Yes.
when they get older? I guess technically they could, but I mean, it's all the same virus.
But it doesn't itch, it just burns and hurts.
Well, the shingles
Shingles.
is the
terrible.
chickenpox virus that when your immune system whipped it out, shingles, just like most viruses, go hide. They wait for your weakness, your immunity weakness, and then they come irritate you again. It's cold viruses like cold sores and blisters in your mouth. And those are all herpes type viruses that when your immune system's strong, it slaps them back, puts them in a cage. Well, when your immune system's weak, the cage door cracks open. And that's when the viruses attack you. And shingles always catch you at a very stressed, weak moment. And boy, do they put a hurting on you.
I've got them in my bad leg.
Oh, jeez. You've got to soon take a whooping from somebody and get it over with. These things just hang on and irritate.
It's like I had them on the bottom of my foot, it felt like he was walking on glass all the time.
Glass, fire, hot coals, a cut foot on hot coals. I
Can
mean,
you get
it's-
shingles if you haven't had the chickenpox?
If you have not had the chickenpox, you would not get the shingles. Because it's the chickenpox virus that it actually lives. That's the reason it shows up here most of the time, but it can show up anywhere. It lives in the phrenic nerves, which deals with the diaphragm, so the center part of your body is where it lives. But your immune system, as long as it's strong, it stays in its cage. If something goes AWOL, a stress, an injury, which could sure enough fire it off. In my grandfather's case, it hits him within a month or two of passing away with cancer. So his immune system shot, and the last thing he needed was the shingles. It was just awful. So that's what shingles is. Now, the memory cells now, they stay behind and they look for chickenpox. This is why you shouldn't get it again. Now, there are cases where people get it again. They didn't have a very strong case the first time or a strong immune response. Now, being the fine parent that I am, when my nephew got the chickenpox in May one year, right at the time school was out, I sent my 2 kids over to play with him. It's a good
Go
time to
ahead and
get
get
it.
it, yeah.
Let's get it and get it over with, and let's move on, because we're home for the summer. We're not going to miss work. So Sabrina gets a couple spots, runs a little fever. Nick runs a little low-grade fever, never gets a spot. Well, with Nick's like in 7th, 8th grade, he gets another case of chickenpox, and he still doesn't get a spot. He likes to run a low-grade fever for a week. Who knows? But so far as I know, he's never had it again. But I mean, we had an effort, we had a plan. It just don't always come together, you know. So expose them while you can. Get it over with, right? The memory cells. Every time you're exposed to it again, instead of a slow process, it's a spike, because they immediately identify it. We don't have to build antibodies. These already know what to make. Boom, we've got it killed off, and we level off up here. How many of y'all ever have babysitted kids with chickenpox? Maybe your own kids. See, I'm already out of that realm, because, you know, my kids had chickenpox, so we as parents was exposed and never got it again. My parents watched me and nephews and cousins and everything else with chickenpox, and they didn't get it again. You see, again, the best immunity is actually acquiring it. The only problem is you have to live through it, right? If you don't live through it, then I guess your immune system was a little shy from what it should have been. That's the bad thing. Needless to say, we don't know how many times we've been exposed to chickenpox. How about all those times in Walmart when the snotty-nosed kid goes running by you? You don't know, you know, if somebody's over there in the clothes rack and they're running around in the clothes rack, you don't know, they took a sleeve off something on the rack. Then they shot out of the clothes rack, mom's hollering at the kid, and the kid's got chickenpox and nobody knows it, but he's just scattering it through worse than any virus through Walmart. And then the times we know we're exposed, and the times we don't know we're exposed, we're getting booster shots all the time. Just go to Walmart if you want a booster shot. Walmart gives free booster shots. No charge, no needle. So that is specific. It identifies a specific organism and remembers that specific organism. That's what you need. Now, I wish our immune system's really good, don't get me wrong. but I wish we were better. When there's over 150 different kind of cold viruses and over 150 different type of flu viruses, it's hard for your immune system to keep up with that. That's why you can get colds more than once, and the flu more than once. And still yet, as many as there are, we should get it more than that, more than we actually do. So, but our immune system's pretty amazing. We even have an immune capability to kill off cancer cells. And that's a T cell that has that capability. They're pretty kamikaze in what they do. They don't need any help. It's a surveillance process. And it's sad to say, but we don't know how many of us in here today have already had cancer and your immune system's taking care of it for you. We don't want to think about that. Especially at the average age we have in here, we shouldn't have to think about that. It's not something to go home lose sleep over. Your immune system is doing its job. That's why we should stay as healthy as we possibly can. Now, if you look in the text, they start the text with susceptibility and resistance. Now, I think we've really covered the susceptibility. We can lower your immune response by stress. Stress actually causes the body to produce a cortisol, which lowers that immune response. You ever heard of cortisone? Or you buy a little tube of cream that's hydrocortisone. It's anti-inflammatory. Well, your body produces that in times of stress and times of inflammation. If you stay stressed, it'll produce more. When it produces more, too much of it will lower your immune system. So that's how viruses attack, is when your immune system fails a little. Long-term stress sets you up for long-term illnesses. So if you're a high-stress person, you can find a way not to be. If you're a low-stress person, you'll all live forever. We all have a tendency to worry, don't we? We got any worry warts in here, worried about everything? There's a difference in worrying about stuff, because when you worry about something, typically it's something you really can't control. I don't know, it shouldn't even make you feel better to worry about it. But if you're worried about something you can control, you typically would fix it and be done with it and move on. So it really does no good to worry whatsoever. My mother's a worry wart. She worries about the least little thing. Loses sleep. I can't say I lose a lot of sleep worrying. I do have concerns, things I'm thinking about, how to fix. That's a guy's thing. We're always trying to fix it. My wife says, "Oh, I've got this problem." Get out of the way, I'm gonna fix it. when she's really saying, "Just listen to my problem. Nobody can fix this." Yeah. So that's the only thing I know about women. Just shut and listen. Inflammation listed on 775. That is a tremendous form of what we started with here in non-specific immunity. Inflammation can be caused by a bee sting, infection, viruses, bacterial infection. It doesn't matter. On 774, they list phagocytosis as a cellular defense, which we have it on the board. They list several phagocytic type cells on that page as well, such as monocytes and macrophages. So a lot of that we pretty much have run across at some point in our life. Now they list some on 775, and one of these T cells I was talking about, the natural killer cells. These NK cells, they call them, are lymphocyte-like cells that can kill virus, infected, and tumor cells that even without, and kill them without an antibody, without a source of identification. They know self from non-self. They're on their own, just leave them alone. They're liable to turn on you and kill you. They have an attitude. A little bit kamikaze. They do have the ability to release interferons, cytokines, which activate other defense cells to come to their aid. So if they get in a big enough battle, they can draw other defense cells to it. Of course, they'll be last resort. They think they're big enough to handle everything already. All right, moving on over to, well, we covered that 777. Look over at a 778. To summarize this as brief as I can, major histocompatibility complex. There's class 1 and class 2. Class 1 is like, this is the best way I know to identify it. There are exceptions to this, but this is the best way. Class 1's like the military. They're killing machines. Get out of the way. They know you belong here, you're a civilian, you're normal. They're not out to kill you, but the guy standing behind you, watch out, he's not supposed to be there, so you better get out of the way. We may have to take you out to get you. A few civilian casualties, but you're not the target. Now, class 2 are the civilians. So they have the marker, they have the name tag self, normal self. Please leave me alone, let me do whatever I do. Go pay Social Security and my taxes. So the government can spend it somewhere else and not pay the military properly. But that's the two classes sorted out the best, the easiest way I know is sorted out. Military, civilians, class 1 and class 2. Recognition molecules, if you look under antibodies on the right hand side of 778, they list some classes of antibodies. They have IgM, IgG, IgA, IgD, and IgE. These are all classes of antibodies. IgM, not overly common. I'm sure it has a purpose, but IgG is the most common. You ever heard of gamma globulins? They're in the bloodstream. That's your IgG. They're extremely common for a variety of things, found in a variety of fluids in the body. IgE deals with allergies. If you're a horrible speller like me, you can remember this. IgE for allergies. And then the next one is the easy one to remember. IgA is found in milk. Where do you go get milk? You can go to IgA, you get milk. So, we got it. Look over on 779. On this page, they subsets of T cells. And there's a lot more than what this book dives into. We get into a little more in depth in chapter 15 in physiology, but they talk about helper T cells and their purpose and their role. And they even put some of the complement system in here, which we talk way more about in physiology. But the complement system, it simply promotes phagocytosis. What the complement system, ultimately there's like CD, which stands for the complement system, CD 1 through 8 or 9 or 10 or something like that. And each, like 1 through 3 has a purpose of identifying the foreign invader. The other ones somewhere in the middle have the purpose of attacking it. And then the last ones have a purpose of promoting more infection-fighting agents to come into it. And the easiest way to identify this complement system and how it works, these little dudes, when they attack, they just like punch holes all in the foreign invader. And typically that causes an influx of water to come into the foreign invader and it blows them up, is what it does. Just punch a hole, influx, they can't take it. And so we just make a big mess, but they have a ball doing it. So wouldn't that be fun? Just watch this. Poke a hole in it, swells up. Watch it. He's gonna fix it. He blows. The immune system's having a ball doing what they do. And the complement system's part of that. Helper T cells trigger a lot of this. And that's the ones I said the HIV virus destroys the helper T cells, which really is the beginning aspect of a lot of our immune responses. If it's not there, the rest of it doesn't know to do what it's supposed to do. It's big. They list something on 780 called cytokines. And cytokines is one of many types of chemical communicators that attracts other immune responses to an area of infection. So we send out cytokines, we bring in the army. It just simply attracts more phagocytic cells to the site. All right, again, on 783, they talk about AIDS and helper T cells in that, so you can mark that if you want to read through that. They even go back to the first case recognized of AIDS in 1981. And by 2009, there's 33 million people living with AIDS. 2.7 million were newly infected in 2007. Women now constitute about half of the cases. Only 10% of the world population live in sub-Saharan Africa, but about 2/3 of all people infected with HIV/AIDS live in this region. So once it gets in an area, it can spread pretty fast. But I mean, we've all been educated enough to know basically how it does spread. So if you're careful with those aspects, then your chances are way less to get it. Blood group antigens. If somebody had type A blood and they needed a transfusion and all you had was type B blood, would it be kosher to give that to them? Now you're thinking like a physician. A while ago, I didn't want you anywhere around. Said, man needs blood. This is all we have. Better than nothing. Oh, you just kill him anyway. Let's go ahead and kill him faster, I guess. So what is it? Why can't you give B blood to A blood or A blood to B blood? What about all the positives and negatives? Who knows your blood type in here?
A positive.
What's yours?
Be positive.
Oh, negative.
That's a good blood type. You should put an always in front of that. Always be positive. What's yours?
Oh, negative.
O negative.
I'm a positive.
That fits you. Negative fits you really well.
A positive.
B positive.
A.
A positive.
Oh, positive.
O positive. You're just average Joe like the rest of us. Anybody else know your blood type? Do you know you have blood? Way to go, Liz. Pretty sure there's something red running through your vessels there. Do you know your blood type?
My little boy.
AB positive? Awesome. That's pretty rare, actually. AB positive is universal recipient. If she needed blood, we could give her. We can give her that B blood sitting over there in the cabinet. It's been there for 27 years. We give it to her anyway. Actually, they don't keep it very long if they don't use it. O positive is most common. AB positive is not very common. B positive, A positive, fairly common. The AB positive is universal recipient. O negative is universal donor. Because O is recessive to A and B, and A and B is codominant to each other. And they're codominant to each other only in the AB blood type. So, if a person has A positive blood, what blood can you give them? What choices do you have? A positive would be a good choice since we try to match it completely.
AB positive.
Nope, you kill it.
O positive.
You can get it from
You
home.
can give them O positive,
Could you give?
you can give them O negative,
Could you give them A?
and you can give them A negative. Yes. So when you get to the RH factor, here's your rule. The rule states you can give a negative to a positive, but you cannot give a positive to a negative. You can give a negative to a positive, but you cannot give a positive to a negative. And here's the reason. RH negative says you don't have an RH factor. So if you give a negative to a positive, you're not giving them anything. So I won't give you what's in my hand here. Nothing. Surprise. So if this blood type is already negative and you give, let's say it's A negative, and all we have here is A positive to give them, the A and A is compatible. But you just introduced something foreign because that body's never seen an RH factor, and now you just presented it with an RH factor. We've got some serious fighting fixing to go on in the system.
I want to say I have A positive and my little boy has O negative, and whenever he was born he got jaundice really bad. He was really sick.
But you're not sure what your blood type
I'm
is?
not for sure. I know, I mean, I wanna say it's A.
A positive or A negative?
I wanna say A positive.
See, the next page
I don't know.
dives into a situation called the hemolytic disease of the newborn. Big scientists call it erythroblastosis fetalis. That sounds bad, doesn't it? Erythroblastosis fetalis. They have 3 days to live. Just kidding. That sounds that bad. It's like when you go to the doctor and they say, I'm sorry, but you have sinusitis, laryngitis, otitis, and whatever itis. Say, well, how long do I have to live? It sounds really bad. Just got a bunch of inflammation. This hemolytic disease of the newborn, the only way it will happen, this is the only scenario it will happen. Mom has to be a negative blood type. Dad and the child have to be a positive blood type. Now, if mom's negative and dad's negative and the child's positive, dad's not dad. Just throwing that in there. Just throwing that out there, just in case. But if dad's positive and the child takes his Rh factor, then we have a foreign blood type growing inside of mom.
It's fighting her the whole time.
Her immune system's like on red alert, thinking there's something wrong here. Especially on the first pregnancy, it's like, man, there's something wrong. I just can't figure it out. And then the baby's born, and the immune system's coming. I know it now. Well, the baby's out, and the immune system's like, this won't happen again. So we get blood exchange between baby and mom during the birthing process, and the immune system's building antibodies fast. So we're not, this crap ain't happening again. That's what the immune system's thinking. But we, being the smart doctors we are, we give them a shot of Rogam today, which kills off all the antibodies the immune system's made. It's like shocking them till their brain clears out, you know. And their memory's cleared, and we don't remember what happened. I don't know. I guess we'll wait till the next one to see. The next one happens, and man, there's something going on here. What is it? Birth of the child. Dang it, I knew that was wrong. We give them another shot of Rogam. It's like, man, I just can't remember anything. So we mess with the system. But you know, that's what brought about blood typing before you could get married years ago, is because if mom was negative and dad was positive, they counseled you, because we didn't have Rogam. And they counseled you saying, you know, there's a good chance your first child will be fine no matter what, but if your first child is Rh negative, and the next subsequent child that's Rh negative, you're probably going to miscarry it, because your immune system's building against it. Now, if all your children are Rh positive, you're great. You never have a problem, as long as it's like, let me reverse that. If all the children are like mom, you're fine. If anything's other than mom, if any child that's Rh positive after that, it's bad news. So they counsel them for it. And then after we come out with Rogam, the state still wanted the money for doing blood testing prior to a marriage, so they required it to see if you had gonorrhea or syphilis. Hello, I know. And in some states, HIV, and now a lot of states said drop it. If they're going to have it, they already have it anyway. And Arkansas hadn't done blood tests in years because they didn't want to know they was marrying their cousin. So,
What is your blood type?
O positive. I'm just average Joe. But I could give her blood. You could give me blood. We could take O negative, but that's it. O positive, O negative is all we could accept. Now, anybody that's O negative, we have some O negatives in here. A couple O negatives. You might take her blood, but I don't know about this one. It's really negative blood type. You're probably O negative. But that's a universal donor, so that's a good to have a phone number of a friend in case you need some blood there. Hey, I'm gonna need a couple quarts today. Start saving up. But that's a generalized concept of the AB blood type and the Rh factor thrown in there. So we got it. I think that finishes up this chapter. It puts us on Tuesday review, which means you need to have your test 5 review sheets completed and prepared to ask questions. Will I go over everything on it? Probably not. Will I answer questions? That's what I'm here for Tuesday. Our test will be next Thursday. Here's my Thursday plans. You can go ahead and turn that off.